Hello there, everybody, and welcome to Talking City podcast, brought to you by the Manchester Evening News. My name is Dan Murphy, and joining me today is a very busy Mr. Simon Bajkowski, I would wager. But Si, how are you?
I'm much better today than I was yesterday.
Well, in the words of the great Cody Rhodes, Si, what do you want to talk about? Because I just don't know where we can possibly start today. I tell you what, it's just reminded me now. I was just actually reading one of your pieces about the ordeal on Monday, and you talked about the original Champions League ban in 2020, and it took me back to that immortal day on Valentine's Day 2020. And about 6:15, I think that news broke, and I was in the office all on my lonesome, and was like in utter shock and horror at the prospect of having to cover that on my own for the next 4 hours. And I had to ring you up, and you were in Morrison's getting a lovely little Valentine's Day meal for your now wife. Somehow your now wife, after you abandoned those plans in the name of content and journalism, to come back in and spend the next 3 hours or whatever it was with me untangling that whole mess. And thankfully this time the latest sanctions came on a Monday at a reasonable time of about 10 o'clock. And yeah, on Monday, as you all know by now, City fans, a 4-year odd investigation by the Premier League resulted in the Premier League levying over 100 charges of breaches of competition rules at City over a 14-year period. And these alleged breaches include kind of revenue and cost rules, contracts, UEFA rules, profit and sustainability rules, and failing to cooperate. It's an unprecedented and seemingly quite significant move from the Premier League side, and one which obviously shines another light on City's finances. City, of course, deny all exact accusations, and in a defiant statement said Manchester City Football Club is surprised by the issuing of these alleged breaches of the Premier League rules, particularly given the extensive engagement and vast amount of detailed materials that the EPL has been provided with. The club welcomes the review of this matter by an independent commission to impartially consider the comprehensive body of irrefutable evidence that exists in support of its position. As such, we look forward to this matter being put to rest once and for all. Si, before we kind of delve into how long it'll take for it to be resolved once and for all, first and foremost, what does this all blimmin' mean? Because I am no lawyer. I don't really know the Premier League rules from back to front, and the Premier League were exactly helpful in providing what rules had been broken when they first breached that statement. So for laymen's like me and potential laymen's listening to this, what does this all mean in its simplest terms?
Simply, the Premier League are alleging that Manchester City have seriously misrepresented their financial position every season from 2009 up to 2018. The investigation into Manchester City started in 2018, and they are also alleging that for every season from 2018 to the current season, Manchester City have failed to cooperate fully with their investigation. So yeah, I mean, we've been down this road before with UEFA and financial fair play rules. The Premier League have different financial fair play rules, but the premise is the same, that you cannot spend more than you can sustainably, and you have to, as a business, be responsible and sustainable with your spending. And the charges against Manchester City are that in their financial reports that they have presented to the Premier League, which have been independently audited, by the way. So, it is seriously misrepresenting if the charges are true. That Manchester City have not been honest about how much money they have spent and the extent of the money coming in, which is enormous. And that is why the commission that has been set up, the fines range from the punishments range from a fine to expulsion from the Premier League. City have won the Premier League, I think it's 4 times in that. No, 2012, 2014, and 2018. So 3 times in that 9-year period. But I've also won, 4 of the last 5 Premier League titles. So you're talking about the Premier League's certainly one of their biggest assets, one of their best assets, the current reigning champions, that the Premier League are now going to war with. So, I mean, we had all this last year. Was it last year, the Super League stuff, or 2 years ago?
2020, it's 18 months ago thereabouts, isn't it? Nearly 2 years.
Yeah, where you've got these huge institutions and organizations taking each other on. You have the same now, and the the decision by the Premier League is so seismic that it would be a surprise if both big heavyweights were left standing at the end of it, although the end of it will be a very long time away, and it's not clear which one it will be, because Man City are defending themselves as rigorously as they did for UEFA, for which they were fully vindicated for.
Yeah, absolutely. And like from the kind of the Premier League's standpoint, there's also, I know you kind of raised a couple of questions in your piece, and that it's interesting timing for these charges to be laid just on basically the eve or the very close before the government white paper on football governance comes out, which is meant to kind of address the potential need for an independent regulator in football as a result of the Super League and kind of the financial situation in not just the Premier League, but of course the whole football pyramid. And it's basically that paper is going to kind of suggest maybe the Premier League can't govern itself, and now the Premier League is trying to, it seems, make a statement of their own, say we can, and look at us, we're going to take on, the kind of the biggest bull in the ring. And as I kind of touched on it, it was interesting that the statement wasn't exactly as smooth as it could be, given the not that they had to change it throughout the day, didn't they, to kind of include links to the rules that had been broken and make it a bit clearer and stuff. So from a Premier League's perspective, it's a big move. I think it's a move that pretty much would be well received by critics of kind of the football's governance in recent times, but it seems perhaps a slightly cynical one in its timing, given what's coming from the government quite soon.
Yes. I was speaking to Kieran Maguire, the football finance expert, and he tweeted as soon as it came out, what a surprise. And, he was saying is it good from the Premier League? Does it show that they are capable of governing if they're coming out and saying that they're, one of the biggest teams in the country has effectively duped them for almost a decade? And it's taken them 4 long years of investigating to find that out. It's strange, and it does strike at the heart of FFP as well, because all of these City have over 100 alleged breaches, and like I say, the first 9 or whatever are essentially you've misrepresented your annual report, which is big. But then you get into like the individual charges, and they go down to like image rights for players, and that is so minor in the broad scheme of things, and so many clubs have had issues with player image rights over everything, and it's changed so much over the last decade that it's kind of it feels like a big move from the Premier League collectively, and it's a huge thing they're accusing Man City of. But some of the individual points are a bit sort of small on their own. And Man City fans have always said that financial fair play was set up, to stop new money challenging old money, and they felt vindicated after the UEFA decision, and this feels like more of the same. Perhaps the Premier League have got more evidence and better evidence that can prove what UEFA couldn't. But it does feel it just feels like a huge thing to allege when the reality is it's not going to be cleared up for quite some time.
Well, let's kind of touch on the financial fair play thing there, because I think it's a kind of system that's been in place for years now, but I still think it's quite confusing to me, no less, and not like I'm some great expert or anything, but it's kind of a minefield, and I think fans look at it from the outside looking in. You see, not to say that they've done anything wrong in what they've done, because I don't really know how the rules work, but they see Chelsea spending 600 million over a 12-month period, seemingly without any care or consequence to financial fair play, and it doesn't seem to have stopped them spending whatever they wanted. And then, as you say, the City aren't allowed to put in what they want. Like it seems weird. And as you say there, I think there is a point of financial fair play was, if it was applied strictly to every club, there is method into it. There's clearly a growing kind of wealth gap in football that is eroding competition. The Premier League is lucky that it has so many big clubs and is the biggest league, and even still it has had one winner for 4 of the last 5 seasons. You look in Germany, there's been one winner of the last 10 seasons. You look in Italy, there's been 3 winners over the last 10 seasons now, but for 9 seasons it was 1. Spain has had 3 winners over the last 15, 20 years, whatever it's been. Like, there's a clear kind of wealth gap growing, and funnily enough, it's the teams that were in the European Super League who've won all those titles, even if they weren't monopolies. So it's, apart from Spurs and Arsenal, obviously, even though that may soon change.
Yeah,
it just seems so confusing.
And it showed, I think someone put up the winners of the leagues if City hadn't won those titles, and I think it was United, Liverpool, United, Liverpool, United, Liverpool. Yep. So it's kind of like, City haven't masked any fairy tale story from coming out.
Not at all.
Whether that makes it right if they breach the rules, but
of course, like what I was kind of getting to before getting lost into that kind of that rabbit hole. Financial fair play in itself is the concept that was kind of needed. Football as a wealth gap, but it hasn't done anything to stop that wealth gap getting even bigger. Pretty much a common trend for life at the minute. But why can Chelsea spend whatever they want freely without, or at least at the moment, without any consequence, where City can? And it also seems like they've had to kind of inflate their revenue, if that's what's been alleged, through their sponsorships and whatnot. But why can't City's owners just spend what they want? Why allegedly would they have to go to these lengths to spend what they want? I think it's quite confusing circumstances for fans to get their heads around.
Yes, and Man City, if you were defending Man City's position, you would say that, Kevin De Bruyne only cost 54 million, and, going all the way back, Yaya Torres and David Silva and Sergio Aguero's were proven to be like such good buys. City's recruitment over the 14 years that they've been under investigation, certainly the last 7 or 8, has been phenomenal. And when you then look at Chelsea spending, and certainly using the sort of contract loophole that UEFA have now closed, I think people are well within their rights to question the broader purpose of financial fair play. As far as Man City are concerned, it doesn't really change the fact that if they've spent money that they didn't have and couldn't have, accounted for it, then that doesn't make them any less guilty of the charges. But as we have said, Man City have firmly denied all the charges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I kind of wanted to come at that with, I think the reaction to it on social media as ever has been quite violent, shall we say, been quite explosive. Obviously, City fans are a good chunk, maybe, perhaps they're not really reflective of the match-going crowd, and it's just a legion of bots and whatever. But there's been defences laid, and I think that is a reasonable viewpoint to be coming at it from. But as you say, if they have broken the rules and they are found guilty of broken the rules, then the punishment should be, severe, because they are severe and kind of plentiful accusations to be levied. And obviously, they've had such success over the last 15 years, and if it's, at the end of the day, if it's been found that they've gotten that success from an unfair playing field, will be it'll be tied with them forever. But that's why City, kind of, as they say in their own statement, they welcome the investigation because they want to clear their name for good. They are confident they'll be found innocent, just as they were, nearly 3 years ago. Oh well, 2 years ago now was it, when the Champions League ban was kind of rescinded. But either way, this is now going to the Independent Commission, as you said. It's going to be a long, long time before we get a resolution out of this. Either way, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the kind of depressing reality of the fact that it will take so long before this commission rules is that, all your usual suspects will just say, yes, City are guilty. And, people have said City are guilty regardless of the CAS decision, or City were fined by CAS for not cooperating with UEFA, and that is taken as oh well, yeah, well they must have been guilty because they were fined, and it's like, well, yeah, if you don't cooperate with an investigation that you think to be flawed, and then you're ultimately proven right on that, then how big a crime is that? And there's a lot of mud that's been flung at City that will stick, that has stuck clearly, because as soon as this came out yesterday, like I say, everyone was out saying, oh yeah, we knew it, yeah, what a surprise. And that will go on and on until City get the chance to clear the name in the commission, and they might not clear the name. The commission might decide that they're guilty, and then they're banged to rights. But until that point, I think again, City fans will have to get used to a lot of people just assuming that they've done wrong.
Mm-hmm. What is the kind of the process now? Should they be found guilty? Is there kind of obviously room to appeal? Could this again go to CAS, or is that off the table this time?
So CAS is off the table, but an appeal can be made by either side should they lose, which would then result in kind of another commission being set up and going through, which would take even more time. But also the stakes are so big for both parties that I might be wrong, but it's hard to imagine either side not appealing if they don't get the decisions that they want. But it is also hard to know what each side wants from it. I've not had any kind of. This isn't coming from any sides, but I would think that Man City would probably be happy with the same verdict as they got at CAS, i.e. they would take the charges for not cooperating with the Premier League's investigation if they could clear themselves of the financial charges. Would the Premier League be happy to walk away saying, right, well, they didn't cooperate and we've taken them to court and taken them to this commission? I don't know. You would think that the Premier League would surely need some of the financial stuff to stick to be able to back up such a serious allegation. And if they didn't, then yeah, appeals on the way.
If it does stick, if they are found guilty and appeals go through, and however long that takes, we kind of touched on the serious punishments on the table for City. I believe you wrote in your piece that they're likely to look forward rather than backwards, so it's not going to be anything silly like previous titles getting rescinded and handed to those teams who finished runners-up, as you suggested. But it's a possibility, I gather, and there is the possibility of points deductions, big fines, and, as you mentioned, expulsion from the Premier League. Obviously, it's kind of impossible to predict at this stage. It's probably years in the future. But what likelihood do you see of any kind of punishments to that extent? Because I remember after the Super League, there was all the talk of the English kind of representatives in that getting relegated or big points fines, and there was none of that, was there? There was just a commitment never to do it again, which we'll touch on in a minute if that'll rear its ugly head once more. But there seems to be big talk of punishments in the past for anything related to this sort of stuff, and they don't usually tend to come. We've seen in Italy, and it's a completely different situation with Juventus, but Juventus are staring down the barrel of yet another big punishment. Is it something that could happen in England, or what do you think?
again, we're kind of in unprecedented territory because of the nature of the allegations. I think, you can usually sort of grade each punishment by the likelihood of it happening, versus the seriousness of it. So, the fine is almost certainly the first port of call, and then you go to points deduction, and then you go to expulsion. But if they're found to have seriously misrepresented the financial position for 9 years, that is enormous. And there's no getting around that. And you will have to be looking at serious punishments. And as well, another kind of factor, we've spoken about the white paper from the government, but also you've got like a number of Premier League, 19 other Premier League teams, but a lot of City's rivals who will be applying pressure to the Premier League in whatever way they can, to make sure that these punishments are serious. Because Guardiola mentioned as recently as Friday, he was like, I've not forgotten the 8 or 9 teams who wrote to CAF to try and keep us out of the Champions League. Well, it would be weird if the clubs that did that then were not also acting in their own interests now. So there's all sorts going on, really.
Yeah, obviously it's a minefield to get around. We're speaking kind of so long in the future, but as well as punishments, what would like kind of the consequences be from this? You kind of mentioned there a few minutes ago, one of these bodies might not survive the ending of this, and that obviously brings up the question of could the Super League make a return if City, all of a sudden one of the first teams to back out of the Super League, or maybe the first, if memory serves, and to kind of come back to the Premier League. And I've obviously committed to never do that again, but expulsion from the Premier League would kind of leave them open to potentially starting this if they wanted to. And it seems, as you said, such unprecedented. We really are kind of talking speculation, but it seems like a real crossroads for not only City but the English football as a whole.
Yeah, it's another one of those moments like the Super League and like Project Big Picture, was it? Where you sort of stare into the soul of top level football and say, what on earth is going to happen next? I think the reality is probably much more boring of it. It'll carry on for as long as this drags on, but it's expected to drag on. And then we will just have to see what the verdict brings. If Man City are found guilty of the most serious charges, then yeah, you're talking about you would think the sort of things that have happened in Italy, or a real a turning point for the game. I'm not sure Man City will be in a position. City not really the most popular of the big six, because of their sort of status as a newcomer into it. I'm not sure if City were found guilty, they'd be in a position to say, all right, lads, let's all form a breakaway league, because I think certainly their English rivals would kind of be more willing to take the money that's on offer from the Premier League and continue with that. Whether any European clubs would want to join them, I'm not sure. But again, I think I just think City would be in a really difficult position and just have to sort of take the punishment and shut up.
It's certainly going to be an interesting one. I mean, I for one would quite enjoy seeing how many goals Haaland could score in League Two. I think he might kind of break all records absolutely possible. But yeah, we're a long way away from any sort of results like that. And I can only apologise for the knocking that you may be hearing right now. My neighbour has suddenly decided hammering the wall on a Tuesday afternoon is the right way to spend the day. So apologies if you can hear that. But kind of looking a bit closer forward, and there's not going to be any consequences or results to this for a while yet, but it's going to make for some quite, you'd have thought, uncomfortable press conferences for Pep Guardiola, who already has quite a lot on his plate, just in terms of managing the team, as we'll get onto in just a minute. But he's pretty much the only representative of City, apart from the odd player, and I don't think they'll be getting asked somehow. He's the only representative of City who will be in front of the media, likely until anything happens. And starting on Friday afternoon, you'd thought he's going to probably have to face some questions.
Yes, he will. Whether there is anyone from the club that speaks before then, I'm not sure. After City were charged by UEFA, their CEO Ferran Soriano did an in-house interview with City TV that was put out, but he didn't face any sort of any questions from external media. The sort of the reason that Man City did that was so that it was on the day of a game, so that Pep Guardiola could then walk into the press conference and say, Ferran Soriano has spoken. The irony being that Pep then turned around and said, "No, I'm going to answer questions on it," and that was when he he did his "Don't talk too loud, Barcelona" thing that sort of proved prophetically true. But yeah, Friday is going to be uncomfortable for Guardiola, regardless of if anyone from the club speaks before it or not, because it will be the first time, realistically, that that journalists can ask questions of him. He has said before that he defends the club because he trusts what they say, and if they're found to have lied to him, then he would walk away the next day. He didn't have to walk away after UEFA and CAS. He stuck with them when they were charged by UEFA, and CAS kind of vindicated that decision. So you would think he will stick with them through to this commission to see, because there is that trust and loyalty, and they are such a tight group. Guardiola with Ferran Soriano, Cheeky Begiristan, Khaldoon Al Mubarak. It is going to be a rough ride for all of them, but Guardiola will get the most because he is the public figure who has to answer questions, every few days. And it wouldn't surprise me if Man City tried to sort of limit the questions over time. But the questions are going to come, and they're going to keep coming, and he will have to sort of step into that role as club spokesperson and answer them all over again.
Absolutely, and it'll be very intriguing to even see if Guardiola lasts until this investigation, the commission comes to a conclusion, because after Saturday's match, the bizarre overreaction to the 1-0 defeat to Tottenham I saw from some corners of social media was utterly mind-blowing. I cannot believe I've seen the hashtag Pep out on my feed, but such is the folly of certain football fans. We can now finally get to a bit of football side. As I said, that bombshell on Monday came right hot on the heels, as it was on the Sunday, after the defeat to Tottenham. As if City and Guardiola didn't have enough on their plate. As I say, another loss in the league, another loss at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, as City once again failed to even score in the white part of North London in that new stadium. It was a winner early on in the game from Harry Kane, a record-breaking goal as he became Spurs' all-time top goal scorer. But other than a Riyad Mahrez shot near the end of the first half that rattled the crossbar, City were pretty devoid of clear-cut chances, pretty devoid of any sort of spark, and they look rather lacking imagination or any sort of rhythm or excitement at the minute. There was a time, even at the start of this season, that City were playing amazingly. The United 6-3, of course, but for months now, they've just become so dull.
Yeah, and on the one hand, since Guardiola, after the Tottenham game at home, said, "Oh, no one was protecting Rico Lewis when he was getting fouled." On the one hand, you've got all the players now who are like bang up for squaring up to referees and other teams, and there was plenty of that at Tottenham. But on the other hand, the football itself just feels flat. And I guess you can be in one of two camps after that Tottenham game. You can either say it's Tottenham at Tottenham, we never do well, however well we play. And I don't think City played badly on Sunday. Not like awfully. They were just pretty bland, pretty average. You can either say, oh, that is, a continuation of this weird thing that Tottenham have over us, or you can say it's a continuation of the kind of post-World Cup form, where they've struggled to get Haaland involved in the play. Their build-up hasn't been great, and they've struggled to create enough chances to win games. I did and would put myself in that latter camp. I don't think, I think Sunday showed many of the problems that we've seen in the last few weeks. Kind of put that to Guardiola in the press conference, and he said, "Oh no, it's just Spurs. It's just this thing Spurs have." So, yeah, those are the two kind of camps of defeat. Or the third camp of defeat is like everything is terrible. Sack the board, sack the team. Start, which they might get their wish if the Premier League get their way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the third camp certainly isn't the camp I'd like to be in. I'll tell you that for free. But I do kind of agree with you. I think after the game, Dave Jones on Sky gave the stat where I don't believe Haaland had a touch in the Tottenham box, was it? Or he certainly didn't have a shot. So that does kind of continue the pattern that Haaland just isn't getting on the ball enough, isn't being fed enough. And I know City, as we've talked about at length, want to keep control. They're not going to play the ambitious passes because they don't want to lose the ball. But as was pointed out a million times, and I think all the pundits on Sky, Graham Souness especially, shock horror there, was growing increasingly frustrated that Haaland was making good runs and City just weren't putting the ball in head of him for him to chase onto. It nearly happened once, and I think Lloris was out really quick to kind of get the ball. And it's like, as you say, they weren't, other than one player who we'll touch on momentarily, no one was like, they weren't bad, they just weren't just any good, really. They just weren't exciting. It just still seems to me, as I've argued on this podcast, it feels so simple. Haaland's there, just pass it to him. They've not. I asked our colleague Joe during the match, like, when was the last time Haaland just like got through on goal? And he informed me it was Chelsea away one of those Chelsea games in January when he went through and he got saved. It's like, remember at the start of the season, the first game against West Ham when De Bruyne put him through and he went through on goal, nowhere near him, and he slotted it in. We all said to a man on the podcast after that, "Oh man, that's going to be a trade, Matt. We're going to see so much of that this season. How many times are you going to run through and just put it into the far corner?" And we've hardly seen it since. It was working. They were playing so well with him, and now they're not. You're now going to tell me why brilliantly, I imagine, because he wants control. But you can have all the control you want. You're not winning games with it.
Yeah, no, it's you can't. De Bruyne can't play that ball to Haaland if he's not on the pitch, which he wasn't on Sunday. And De Bruyne and Gundogan on the pitch, and Guardiola said it was tactical. And yeah, I mean, he's trying to get people to get closer to Haaland, so Alvarez can do that. And Bernardo Silva was in the team on Sunday and was actually one of the better players. But at the same time, I sort of think leaving your captain and your vice captain on the bench, a big game, Tottenham away, it's a bit weird. And it kind of speaks to the issues that Guardiola is having post World Cup of kind of getting a tune out of this team and this squad, and finding the right blend. And it does seem like a lot of players individually are out of form and can't find that form. And it's shown in the fact that they're struggling to find Haaland so much. But I also think Haaland did a great job dropping deep and keeping possession. But there were times on Sunday when he got the ball near the goal, and I sort of thought Haaland 3 months ago would have shot, and it would have gone in. And it might not have gone in on Sunday, but take the shot. And there were times when Alvarez was charging about around the box. I think it was the chance that actually led to Mahrez hitting the bar, but Alvarez had the ball for so long in the box and so many touches, and you're a striker, you've been bought to score goals, and you're not interested in taking a shot when you're in the box. And yeah, it feels like everything is a bit off, and
Mm,
I kind of get that. I get why the defenders that are in the team are playing, and Ake and Akanji and Walker have all got good qualities. And I thought they brought again. I didn't think they were really bad against Spurs. And Ake and Akanji in particular did really well against Harry Kane. But they're not your players that are going to build the team up from the back. And this team has been built on build up from the back and kind of Aymeric Laporte's left foot. And even if Laporte's not played, they've had a way of finding that build up, and it's just not there at the minute. Yeah.
yeah. What you say with the touches? I'm sorry, with the shots taking so many touches. I think that's kind of throughout the team. I believe it was Souness maybe slagged off a minute ago, but it was right here. Like everyone's taking 2, 3, 4 touches before they're releasing the ball, rather than the kind of essence of Guardiola is one touch, move it straight away, or no touches in, one touch getting it out, and the one touch being your pass. Get me words out there. Everything seems kind of slow and laboured, and like they're just not sharp. They're not on it. And we've been speaking like this for a few weeks now, and I don't really know what needs to change at this point, because I don't know how many different combinations and formations and inverted fullbacks. I don't know what he kind of has left, other than, as you say, back to basics. Diaz and Laporte in perhaps, and I would say Cancelo at left back, but little chance of that now. Get players back in 4-3-3. Get, maybe it's quite a kind of derivative or Allardyce-esque to just say, listen, just get back to basics, do the simple things well. But Fabian Delph made himself a City folk hero by saying just as much in that documentary, didn't he? Just do the basic things well. Don't overcomplicate things. And I think Rico Lewis is doing a great job of what he's doing, but he's an 18-year-old lad being asked to play on the unfamiliar side in an inverted role, getting the ball on the half turn against people pressing him like Kuleveski and Emerson, who I thought had a good game. And it just seems a little too intricate at the minute when things aren't going well, and maybe just when confidence is obviously clearly a little bit low, maybe just go back to what worked, what was working. That just blows my mind. There's not out of it yet by any means, but to not take advantage of Arsenal slipping up for the, losing their second match of the season, the first one since I think early September, if not August, it was a massive opportunity lost. And even when Rodri's not playing well, then you've got issues. But it was his kind of horrible error that gave away the goal, but he wasn't good for the rest of the match either. But I think this was quite a predictable outcome. Guardiola said back in September, Rodri cannot play every game. No one can. It's such an intense schedule. But he has played and started every Premier League match other than one, the 6-3 over United, funnily enough. He started 4 of the 6 Champions League group games, came on at half-time in one of them, has started all but one domestic cup game. And I think in all of his Premier League starts, he's only come off before the 75th minute once. Throw in a World Cup in which he played every minute for Spain, including a penalty shootout defeat. He has played so much football, and it was inevitable that eventually he was going to... I don't want to say it's just fatigue or whatever, because he's obviously an incredibly fit athlete, but just so much kind of wear and tear is going to get you eventually. And the issue is in that front is that Phillips hasn't been fit, hasn't been available for a large portion of the season, and since he has been fit and available over the last 11 games, he's only started once, which was the defeat to Southampton, and he's doesn't seem to be trusted by Guardiola yet, but it's given him a big problem, one that he foresaw all the way back in September.
Yes, and well done for seeing it. Less well done to Guardiola and the executive team for not getting Phillips to a position, either not getting Phillips to a position where he can play regularly, or if they don't think he can play regularly, for buying him in the first place. I said to Joe at half time of the Spurs game, I said, if City's squad was enough, then Rodri would be off at half time, because he was so bad. And it does feel like that fatigue and just his decision making at what turned out to be crucial times, but even innocuous times, like I think the end of the first half, he just smashed a ball from the halfway line to straight out of play for a goal kick. And has not been good enough. You know, the consecutive errors against Tottenham have cost them goals, and you know, he looks like a player that needs a rest. Phillips is the obvious option to bring in. City have got a real problem if they feel like they can't trust Phillips to come in and play games. Now, you know, Aston Villa at home, I would think maybe that's the ideal chance for Phillips to start, because
I think it's more likely Gundogan plays there, which is absolutely possible, but it just doesn't bode well, does it?
That is possible, but then, you know, you've only got 3 players who you trust to play at 8, and Gundogan's one of them. So if you play Gundogan there, then, well, I suppose Alvarez is coming now, but still, you sort of losing your options there. And again, what are you doing with Phillips? Why is Phillips not there? And I think the danger with Phillips is we sort of like treating him as if he's like some academy kid, and like, oh well, he's only played, you know,
165 minutes.
Yeah, he's only had 1 start against Southampton. He's not started in the league, and you kind of forget that, like, you know, he was a mainstay of the Leeds team for a long time and has, you know, a lot of Premier League experience under his belt. And if he was still at Leeds and Leeds were playing Aston Villa, you would not think twice about Calvin Phillips being in the team. So it is quite strange that, you know, Phillips seems to be in this position where he's not trusted to play like any minutes. You know, because it wasn't like Rodri got markedly better over the course of Sunday. So yeah, I think, like you say, when Rodri is not playing well, then you really know things are a bit out of balance at City. Although, you know, we must keep pointing out or saying that, like, when we talk about things being like quite out at City, like, they're still second, they still could win the league, they're in the FA Cup, they're in the Champions League knockouts. It's like City's crisis season is not like a Liverpool or a Chelsea crisis season.
No, absolutely not. But it does, and you know, I think we've often caveated that after like the draw with Newcastle, wasn't it, months ago, when we was like, oh, blimey, it, look how bad they've been in here, and there was like, but it's not the end of the world, is it? But I do think now it does feel a little bit more like we're approaching the end of the world in the fact that these kind of bad results keep happening. I think you pointed out City haven't managed to win 3 games in a row all season, or at least in the league, and that was mind blowing to me. It's like, as you've kind of touched on so many times, they were just the kings of winning 10, 11, 12.
I think that was wrong, that stat.
Oh, was it really?
I think so. Got it from Opta as well.
It was your stat, so I don't get any blame.
Yeah. I don't think they've had 4.
4, right.
4 in a row.
Well, still, I think that still is quite bad for City when we've known them over the years to be able to win 10, 11, 12, 13 on the spin like it's nothing, with absolute kind of just really casually. And to be such in a rut and not be able to get anything kind of going or any sort of momentum, like, there's still a long time to go, but they are running out of time a little bit to get a run going and some serious momentum that will be enough. I would say Arsenal have had their first setback now. They didn't react pretty well to it on the pitch, and the player who was doing the most shouting and kicking off was the most experienced one on there, in Zinchenko, of course, who had a little got absolutely hook, line and sinkered by Maupay, who was taking gamesmanship to the actual 10th degree. Can they react to that? Can they keep their heads after that one defeat? Maybe City losing obviously does them a massive favour. The 2 teams meet in 2 weeks. A lot could change in a short amount of a week, even a short amount of time. But City don't have a lot of time to go. And I thought Kyle Walker spoke quite well after the match. I don't know if you saw, but he seemed like he kind of said the quiet part out loud when he basically just said, "It's all well and good," paraphrasing. It's good having the nice possession, but we need to shoot more. We need to get more shots on target. And if now even the players are publicly kind of pointing out what's going wrong, something really does need to change for Sunday's game against Aston Villa.
Yeah, I don't know if I said it on the podcast. I really hope I did, so I don't appear to be, smart after the fact. But I sort of thought, it was entirely possible for City to beat Arsenal home and away and not win the league, because it's your games like Tottenham away where, you can beat Arsenal in 2 weeks, great. But if you've lost to Tottenham or you've lost to Villa, then there's no point in, you don't get any benefit from beating Arsenal. We kind of feel like we're in that 1920 territory, where City will play. Well, I suppose City played better in that season, but just where the consistency wasn't there. And Arsenal lost at the weekend, but are still on for a stupidly high points total. You're like, if you're talking about City win the league, can they get 90? Can they get 100 points? Absolutely not. Can they get 90 points? That's probably your absolute ceiling. I don't know if that's mathematically possible. Even I think it is, but so then you're looking at like 85 points, and then you're like, well, is 85 points good enough to win this league? Well, against an Arsenal team that's playing like it is, no. So you're relying on other factors, which is Arsenal tailing off in this second half of the season. And I saw Kyle Walker's interview, and he sort of said, I know this team can pull off a load of wins in a row. And you look at the team and you think, I don't think they can. The way they're playing, I don't think they can, because they're making too many basic errors and gifting goals. And whenever you gift goals, it's harder to pull it out the fire and come back. And in a sense, they've been doing it for more than not whatever the opposite give them credit for this season is. You think like the home comebacks against like Crystal Palace and people like that, they've been conceding more goals than they should for most of the season. And that is not a team that is like the relentless machine that's going to win the league. So not saying they can't win the league and they can't beat Arsenal home and away, but they're going to have to find a consistency that they haven't had yet, and hope that Arsenal tail off quite badly.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the word you're kind of looking for is like we let them off the hook quite a lot. I think in this podcast we certainly pointed out the new defensive frailties, but we kind of said, oh, they brought Haaland in. It seems like they've sacrificed a bit of that kind of solidity in order. They've got Haaland, you're going to score more than everyone anyway. You're basically starting a game, and they were at the start of the season, like pretty much 1.5 goals ahead just because of Haaland being in the team. That's how much he was scoring. So it didn't really matter as much if you let a couple in. They sacrificed that, really solid foundation. But now, and it was working really well. City were playing some great football. Were really fun to watch. Were scoring loads of goals, and they were, they weren't top, but they were a point behind for most of it, and it was going well. And then it seems that there was a cut-off point in that Liverpool game, maybe, as we've said previously, where Pep Guardiola maybe wanted to get that solidity back, but couldn't with Haaland. So he's done this. He's brought the inverted fullbacks in to have another body in midfield, congest the area, try and make them more solid, and I should say play a lot more conservatively on the ball, not take as many risks, not getting the ball into Haaland as much, because he scores loads, but he can also lose it. You're running onto loose balls, there's more likelihood of losing it than whether it's just to feet. But they've not been able to get that solidity back, because now, with the way they're playing, Lewis is playing really well and doing really well in the task he's been given, but the amount of times him and Walker were kind of caught, and the whole team was caught on the lethal counters coming back. Like Spurs could have and should have won far more than that 1-0, the amount of opportunities they had on the counter, and it was only some resolute defending from like a Kanji and Ake and Lewis and Jack Grealish. I want to kind of quickly give credit to him, because I thought his form still remains good, and the defensive work he's putting in has been brilliant. And there's the bad kind of finishing from Son and Kulusevski and Kane. Like, there should have been more. And I don't know if they can get that defensive solidity back now, because it just seems they started the season one way and they've tried to change halfway through, and that's quite a hard thing to do, I'd imagine.
Yeah, although I can't remember many Tottenham chances.
I think they didn't kind of end in shots. They kind of went through, and then like Ederson, like they countered really quickly 3 or 4 times towards the end when City were going for it, and then it was either the final ball was dodgy or a tackle came in and stuff. Like, they were nearly caught out 4 or 5 times if they were a little better going forward. But that's what I kind of mean. Like, he's trying to go back to this defensive solidity, but it's not working, because having Haaland in the team means you have one less body who's really good on the ball to kind of conserve it. And the solution to me, and I say I'm not a great tactician or anything, just seems to be just go back to what was doing so well at the start of the season, where you were just blowing teams away.
Yeah, Yeah, they just look disjointed at the minute, and there doesn't look to be a link between the defense and the attack. And there's quite a vulnerable, large space in that middle of the pitch where they're not controlling, which for a team about control is concerning for them. Yeah, I don't really know how they go about solving it. You know, you've got people saying, "Oh, just play your best 11 players," but who are your best 11 players? Because on Sunday it's hard to say who was in better form that should have started. And also, yeah, like aside from Rodri, it's hard to say who really really underperformed. It was just the team aren't doing what they want to do.
Well, things will have to change on Sunday. If another big reaction needed. Villa lost to Leicester 4-2 in quite an exciting game at the weekend, but otherwise had been going quite well under Unai Emery. Mind you, more than capable against scalps against big teams. I believe Villa beat Tottenham themselves a few weeks back. And beat United at one point, didn't they? In Emery's first game, wasn't it, in the league, 3-1, I believe. So it's not the easiest of games. A challenging manager who Guardiola probably know well from time in Spain and whatnot. One who plays quite resolute football. One who could be hard to break down. And it's going to be another test of how City can they find Haaland? Can they get that attacking verve to get past him?
Yeah, it is. Although I don't know. Maybe we'll be looking back at this season and say, "Oh, the Villa game was the real turning point." But I think just like
You did say that last weekend, though. I'll tell you that for free. You did say that about Tottenham.
well, yeah, but I think Tottenham. I stand by that Tottenham might be a game where we say, well, that was the time where we all realised that they're not consistent enough to win the league, and they're not good enough even with a collective mentality to take advantage of Arsenal slip-ups, because that was the other, real psychological element of the weekend. And Walker said before the game, he was like, yeah, we have to take that into account. They weren't able to do what they did in 18 and 19, well, less 18 because they strolled it, but 19 responding to Liverpool. They weren't able to do that. Like, they can comfortably beat Aston Villa without it meaning anything to their season other than, they'll finish second. So, yeah, not to, whatever. I'm trying not to swear.
I know what you. I know exactly what phrase you want to say. Does it begin with P and ends in chips? I'm gonna guess.
Yes.
Bang on.
Yeah. I'm trying not
Bang on.
to take the umph out of the question, but it feels like Aston Villa will probably mean very little to the wider context of City season, unless something major happens and they don't win.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at. Like, if they don't win again, could it really be panic stations? I mean, what kind of changes do you foresee, if any, to the game? We talked about the midfield options, but a new one they've got, which we did not foresee. Maybe we were so facetious in thinking we'd never see his face again after signing. But Maximo Peroni was on the bench at Tottenham due to Phil Foden's kind of late admission. Will we see the pint-sized Peroni actually make a Premier League debut? What a turn up for the Bucks that would be.
Well, it would shred all my credibility if he did, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was a surprise to see him on the bench. It was a surprise to see him, involved. I don't know if he was maybe a late replacement for Foden, because Foden obviously travelled down with the team and then was ill at the team hotel, so wasn't part of the squad. So maybe there was a sense of that. But if he's been thrown in for the Tottenham game on the bench, then there's no reason why he wouldn't be thrown in again for other matches. Yeah, he must have made a good impression on Guardiola to be included in the squad.
Any other changes you think? Foden come back if he's recovered?
Yeah, possibly. But then, like you say, Grealish was quite good. Although Grealish has massively divided the fan base as well. Like half of them didn't think he was any good on Sunday, and which I can appreciate the points, but I still think he was one of the one of the better players. I mean, I think one change that might be necessary is stop looking up, look down. Like as worrying as it might seem, Manchester United are doing pretty well. I think they could. I doubt the goal difference is good enough to be above them if they beat Leeds in midweek. But I think they play Leeds twice before City are next in action.
Yeah, well, they'd have to win by about 24-0, I think, to kind of go above them on goal difference, which, given Leeds' form, isn't completely out of the question, but unlikely.
Yeah, but if they play them twice, then they can go above City before City play, because City is inexplicably a 4:30 Sunday afternoon game. So so it would be looking up actually if United won. But all this focuses on Arsenal. Well, yeah, there are other teams in better, more consistent form than you at the minute, and maybe focus on sort of keeping clear of them before you can then go and tackle Arsenal again. We're all about City v Arsenal in the title race, but if City are below United, then United are in the title race, surely. So
certainly, yeah.
So it's about expectations, and I think the boring footballer answer is take every game at a time. But I really do think City just have to take Villa, get them out of the way, and then really build up to Arsenal.
Well, it's certainly concerning times for Manchester City on and off the pitch. But if you want to keep up to date with all the latest news in terms of the charges laid at the club by the Premier League and the club's fortunes and misfortunes on the pitch, you know where to go. It's over at manchestereveningnews.co.uk/Manchester City. And if you'd like to watch this podcast in living colour, you can go over to our brand new YouTube channel, Manchester Evening News-Man City, to get, as I say, to watch this podcast in our little Zoom screens, and plenty more great video content. To go over there, give it a cheeky subscribe, like, and enjoy all the content. Thank you very much for listening to the latest episode of the Talking City podcast. We'll be back next week, no doubt, to talk about that Villa game, whatever it entails, and all the more drama that's coming out of the Etihad. But until then, everyone, it's goodbye for now. Ta-ra.